This is a bonus episode of Dear Rach Soph, and I'm going to kick it off by saying, hello, Rachael Johns.
Hi, Sophie Green. How are you? It's good to see you again.
It's so good to see you on Zoom. Of course, we are in contact quite regularly, but we haven't seen each other on Zoom for a while because we took a break from Dear Rach Soph, but we are back for this bonus episode, which we'll get to the contents of in a second. But I would like to tell our listeners/watchers that we will be starting season 3 of Dear Rach Soph in March.
And we have already got lots of exciting content and interviews and stuff planned. But we're going to kick off, I think, with a reader episode. We've had a few little questions from readers, just ones that we can answer quite succinctly. So if you have any reader questions, you're a reader and you have any questions about how writing or publishing works or why sometimes books have different covers for different places around the world, whatever you want to know about writing books and the publishing industry, send us your questions to what's the email again, Soph?
Well, I think I'll make it my Gmail address now. So
Okay.
it's sophiegreenbooks@gmail.com, or you can send either one of us a DM on Instagram.
Yeah. And we'll happily answer it and put it along. So we're excited about that first episode. We've got a few questions already, and then we've got well, we won't give too much away, hey, Soph?
Oh, we won't, but we keep adding to the list and going,
I
oh,
know.
quite a lot of episodes.
We're like, first, do you think we could do season 3? Would we have enough to talk about? Then over the summer, we keep messaging each other and saying, what about this? What,
Oh,
we should interview this person about this. And now I think we've got almost 20 different types of, things to discuss. So, and I'm sure others will come up as we talk throughout the year.
we do have a lot to discuss. And I have to say now that I'm in a bidding war for your podcast time because, Rachael Johns, you have another podcast wife. Please tell
I
everyone
know.
what's going
I'm
on.
cheating. No, not cheating. What's it called? Bigamy. I've got 2 podcasts going on.
Born between two lovers.
Two lovers. Yes, so my other podcast is called Reading Between Deadlines, and I do it with the lovely Anthea Hodgson, who also hosts the Rachael Johns book club with me. And so, yeah, it's kind of linked to that, in that we do some book club author interviews, but we also read a book a month that's sort of getting a lot of hype around the world and discuss what we think of it. So, but I just love talking to you, Sophie, and I love talking to Anthea about books as well. So, I'd be happy if I could just get paid to do podcasts all day.
Look, your readers might take issue with that because it might mean that you're going to be writing fewer books. What I'd like to know
They're
about,
lucky because I don't get paid to do the podcast. It's purely from joy and the fact that I like talking to you. So I have to keep writing.
likewise, and also we want to keep writing, but I would like to know with the Reading Between Deadlines podcast, is there argy-bargy between you and Anthea as to which of those best-selling books from around the world you are covering? Are you drawing straws? How are you deciding?
Well, the first couple, I think the first 3, I kind of said, what about we do this? And I keep telling her, you're going to choose something, you're going to choose something. But I think she likes having me to blame if she doesn't like it or it doesn't go well. But we just recorded recently the second one, which will go live on Valentine's Day. And at the end of that, we've asked if people can, we've chosen a book for March. We've asked if people will vote on our Substack on which book they want us to do in April. So we're going to it will be a process where sometimes I might choose, sometimes Anthea might choose. If anyone has suggestions, they can send them to us. And you're going to be one of our first guest authors on the pod. That won't be starting till, I think, April, May, just while we all, catch our breath at the beginning of the year. But we are going to have a guest author once a month. This may be a bonus for paid subscribers. We're going to have a guest author once a month where the guest author tells us or gives us a book to read that they have really loved or it's made some sort of impact in their life. And then we will read it too. And the guest author will tell us, why they love it. We might talk a little bit about the writing structure, whatever, all the different things. And we will decide whether we love it or not as well. So, yeah, looking forward to doing an episode with you in the not too distant future.
Likewise, and you write a lot, you also read a lot. And for anyone who's listening or watching and knowing they would like to read more, because I think that the desire to read more can often be at war with all the other things
Oh,
that are
yes. The
kind
guilt. There's so many other things you
yeah.
should be doing.
Do you have, is there as a tip, just say someone's losing their reading rhythm or they've lost it and they're listening to this and thinking, well, actually, I do love books, but I'm just really struggling to get back to reading, is there anything you can tell them about how you actually get to fit in so much reading in and around your writing and household duties and other things?
Well, I don't watch much TV, which I am trying to watch a little bit more because I think TV is also very good for, I mean, it's enjoyable and fun and you can do it with, family and stuff and watch a show together and that. But I do think TV is really good for writers too because, there's some really great TV shows, well written, really, at the moment showing, how good character and hooks and stuff at the end of episodes. So I think it's important, but I don't watch much TV. So that does free up the time when a lot of people might be watching TV. I will read. I read every single night, anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour, depending on, how tired I am. I do listen to audiobooks, although I tend to listen more to podcasts. So I can't say that's how get that stuff done. But I think the more you read, the quicker you get. Like, I don't think I'm that fast to write a reader, but I do make sure, like, I prioritize reading, if that makes sense. And there's two reasons I do that for those writers listening, because I know we've got a lot of writers listening to this podcast. I 100% believe that the more you read, the better you write. And, I took a long time to get published. And one of the reasons I took so long was because I hadn't really been a big reader and I fell in love with reading around the same time as I fell in love with writing. Now you can do courses, you can read all the craft books, I've got a lot of writing craft books, Sophie, but I really don't think there's anything like just reading widely, working out what you like and what you enjoy and what's, and just immersing it, even not thinking about it, just, the pure experience of reading lots of books helps your writing. So I prioritize it because I enjoy it, but I also prioritize it because I feel like it's key for me to continue to grow as a writer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I concur with that assessment. And speaking of reading, people who have listened to this podcast for a while have heard us talk about your readers retreat that happened on the Gold Coast last year. Now, you weren't going to do one 25, but you are now going to do one. I will be there, and so will some other authors. So for anyone who hasn't heard about this yet, because we have some people who listen to this podcast who are not members of your online book club, yes. Can you please give some details about that?
Sure. So you can go to Rachael Johns bookclubretreat.com. So it's pretty easy to find. And basically it'll have the list of authors there, including Sophie, and my mind has gone completely blank of who else is coming. Natasha Lester, Stella Quinn, so many more at the moment. And of course, Anthea and I, who run the book club. It's a weekend, basically, if you're obsessed with books like we are, it's a weekend where you get to enjoy your obsession with other people who feel exactly the same way as you. There's panels. There's what we call author speed dating, which is way better than it sounds. And it was one of the surprising elements of our first two retreats. So we get the attendees to sit about 8 to 10 to a table, and the authors move between the tables, and they each do different things. Some just talk, some do a Q&A, some play a game. And it's just everyone who attended just found that, small group experience with the author really good. And the social events, so it's games. It's just a really fun weekend.
Yeah, it was really fun. I think that was the key for me. So I kept thinking, I am having so much fun.
Yeah. And we need fun in our lives. Like you just turn on the news and it's all depressing. Yeah. So I think, we don't want to ignore that and what's going on in the world, but we do need to give ourselves, grace and the time to, enjoy what we like and relax as well.
And I'm fond of saying fun is underrated for adults.
So I agree. I love that. That should be on a t-shirt.
So I think this is a way to have fun, and I will say I'm surprised. I've been to a lot of writer related things in all my years in publishing, more so than as a writer. And there was just the atmosphere that you and Anthea created, and the sense of fun, yes, but also fun and joy, which is related to fun, but is actually not the same thing. And I just found that the people who attended were so lovely to a person. All of the readers who were there, and there were people who came on their own. So if anyone's listening and they're thinking, I don't know anyone, will I come on my own? There were people who made friends there because they came on their own, and everyone was just so friendly to everyone else. So it was the most uplifting experience I had all year, I think.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's why we're doing it again, because we were like, we can't fit it in, but then like it really gives us an uplift and buzz as well, and reminds us why we write, and but I think you're right, becoming alone is definitely a thing you can do because, you know, when you meet someone, you make a friend, it's usually because you've got something in common, right? Well, you've got something in common with every single person here.
Yeah.
You love books, but I also think it's different because, you know, there's a lot of writing festivals where readers can go along and listen, but it's a bit more of a distance between the authors. You know, you watch them up on a panel. Whereas here, you're really, you know, the authors are part of the weekend and they're involved in every aspect of it. So you know, you might be sitting next to them at lunch, and so it's a real community thing. But I also think, yeah, it's a different, it's not the same vibe as a festival or a workshop. It's the focus is readers rather than writers and learning to write. Yeah.
And for anyone who's wondering as well about any sorts of expectations of them on this weekend, there is absolutely no pressure to buy a book. And I like to
Oh,
emphasize
no,
that some people feel like, oh, if I go to that, then I'm going to have to buy books. No author is expecting you to buy their book.
no.
I would also encourage people, because this one is in Western Australia, there isn't a lot on the West Coast, for the simple reason that a lot of Australians live either in the centre or on the East Coast. And
Yeah.
the publishing industry is focused on the East Coast. So a lot of the reading and publishing, writing related activity happens, as in event activity happens on the East Coast. So if
True. I
you're,
think of that as a WA writer.
yeah, that's right. So anyone who's in WA, South Australia, Northern Territory, looking for something that's actually a little bit easier for them to get to,
Yeah.
I'd say
That's one of the reasons why we wanted to do it here in WA, even though the majority of our members, I think, are on the East Coast. But this year we thought, well, we can do it because we're here. So we'll fit in an extra one that we weren't going to have because we don't have to travel ourselves and do all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And it's basically in Perth. So it's not like you have to travel hours up the coast.
Right at the beach near Scarborough. It's only a short, you know, taxi drive from the airport or a shuttle bus. Yeah.
So look, friends, Romans, countrymen, come and join us.
Weekend with us in May.
Yes. So speaking of reading,
Hmm?
I've read the new Rachael Johns, which is The Bad Bridesmaid, and that is
Got a copy too.
this is the subject of our bonus content episode, because at the time we're speaking, it's just about to be officially released to the world. Now, it is not necessarily the sequel; it's in the universe of.
Yeah, I like. Yeah, in the universe is good, or like a linked book. That's
The linked book, yeah. So we have Bridget, or B as she is known from this book, who is. She does pop up in this book.
The other Bridget, for people who aren't watching. I just thought just listen.
Oh, sorry, yes, thank you. The other Bridget. Thank you. I'm so video focused. So I have some questions for you. Actually, I've prepared a whole lot of them.
Excellent. Okay.
We'll probably go off piste, as we often do.
I'm sure.
But I'm going to start by saying, and I'm not going to actually read out the storyline because I hope to, through the questions, actually draw a bit of that out rather than just reading a blurb. Anyone can go online.
Anyone can read it. I agree.
Yeah. So the main character of the novel is Fred, or Winifred, and we meet Fred in the other Bridget, as she is Bridget B's best friend.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know from the time you created Fred in the other Bridget that she would have her own story?
What do you think?
I think she came through so strongly for me in the other Bridget that I remember thinking at the time, oh, like this is something, you know? Yeah. So to me, it felt like, yes, she was already fully realized on the page and there must have been another story there.
No, not really. So this book the other Bridget came just completely by itself, but I needed characters and friends, and so I populated them with all different, you know, types of people. Anyone who's listened to this and has heard us talking about our writing process before will know that I am not much of a plotter, and that, you know, characters develop as I go and their part in the story also develops. So I think the only idea I had with Fred, just a little background for anyone who hasn't read the other Bridget. Bridget is a die-hard romantic. She loves reading romance novels. She loves watching rom-coms. She wants to get married, have babies, live happily ever after, the whole shebang. Fred, I like to say, is her opposites attract best friend. And I kind of did that just for the fun of it, I think. Like, you know, as I said, I don't really think very far in advance. And I really wanted to show also a strong single female character who is happy single. Mm-hmm. And, you know, to show that you can have a really fulfilled life. Sometimes I'm jealous of my single friends, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to show also that a little bit about play with the sort of stereotype of like the guy is the one who sleeps around. And, you know, I wanted to show that, you know, Fred Fred is basically the typical hero in a romance novel. You know, she's the person who's doesn't settle down because and like enjoys herself with members of the opposite sex and all this sort of stuff. And there was reasons why I did that. So I never planned on writing her story because I planned on her just being this character who's really fun, independent, self-assured, loves her life, loves being single, and that's just what she was. Now she writes a novel. She tries to write a novel in The Other Bridget, and I gave her this title called How Not to Catch Feelings. It's a novel. Obviously, a lot of people say your first novel is heavily based on you or your experiences, and I think that's probably what Fred was doing. She's writing this novel, How Not to Catch Feelings, basically how to date, and just have fun. And it's a total mess in Bridget. But and I wanted, just as you said, going off on a tangent already, Sophie, but you and I have been in publishing in one way or another for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that in books I read, actually, I'm interested to know, have you heard for a long time you shouldn't write about a writer?
No, I haven't heard that.
Because we used to hear that in the romance writing world, and I think it was, and I got a theory the other day. I reckon a lot of first, because I've totally gone off on tangent. I promise I'll get back, but I think this might be useful.
But this is part of why the podcast is fun for people to listen to, is because it's not a rat-a-tat-tat. Please answer my question. Next question. So it's not a tangent, Rachel. This is in fact
okay. Well, I think it might actually help aspiring writers.
I've got to take off my earrings anyway because they're hurting. Ow.
Okay. So basically, I was told when I was aspiring writer for many years, that the romance industry, particularly the romance writing publishing world, didn't want to read about writers, and they didn't want to read about actors or sports people. And we're seeing now sports romance and all this sort of stuff. But I have a theory that I've come up with in the last couple of weeks about why this might have been. Because now we're seeing a lot of books about, we started probably with Emily Henry's Beach Read, which was about, two writers. And then since then, there's been so many books about writers, publishers, agents, people involved, booksellers, all that sort of stuff. But I read a lot of entries for like sort of unpublished manuscripts or short stories or parts of unpublished manuscripts for the Romance Writers of Australia as a judge. And I've noticed a lot of sort of first manuscripts are about an author or a writer. And it's always the author or the writer is like super successful, living the dream, or they've been super successful, now they've got writer's block or whatever. But it's very much like you don't see what the reality usually is, and that's that it takes most people multiple manuscripts, multiple years, or some kind of other training. Like a lot of journalists manage to do it sort of first time, but they've, or publishers and stuff, they've already worked in that industry. The majority of people turn up, it takes a while, and yet I never saw that in any manuscript. So with Fred, I wanted to sort of show, so she doesn't just write this novel and it's amazing first time. But I was saying, I think the reason maybe that editors and publishers that I'd heard for used to shy away from this is because a lot of first manuscripts have the author character, and so probably, and the most first manuscripts are not great, you know what I mean, like, and they're like, oh no, this is not interesting, rather than this is not good, right? So maybe that tarnished, I don't know, anyway. But I really wanted with Fred to show that you don't just become a best-selling author overnight. It takes time to learn your craft and stuff like that. So that was sort of just all her little bit going on. But when I started to think about her story, I sort of fell in love with her as I was writing her. I thought, oh, maybe there's a story for Fred, because everyone else kind of in the book is with someone. And I thought, oh, what if her book's called How Not to Catch Feelings? And what if she becomes a surrogate for the gay guys in the first book, her colleagues? And it's not just about not catching feelings for a man, it's also about not catching feelings for the baby that she's, being a surrogate for. I really loved that sort of concept.
Yeah.
But I came across a few problems with this. The first one is that gay men can't do surrogacy legally in Western Australia. I probably could have got around that with just a little note saying,
this is a novel,
kind of thing. But the other one, which I did know, but I, hadn't really thought deeply about, is that Fred's young. She's in her mid to late 20s, she has not had children of her own. She thinks she doesn't want them, but generally the idea with generally surrogacy is, it's not encouraged. People actually, the medical people won't let you do it unless you've, already had children of your own. So you're less likely, I suppose, to have blur the lines. Yeah. So I thought it's very unlikely that she would be able to do this. And so I kind of just pushed that idea aside and thought, nah, Fred's just going to stay as one of my favorite side characters in the first book. But then, sorry for my long-winded answer, then in The Other Bridget, my publisher, when we were doing the edits, I can't remember exactly what stage, she said, look, I get what you're doing with Fred, like, she's the opposite of Bridget, and, that's part of the fun of it and all that. But she comes sometimes across as a little bit prickly, just a little bit sort of too much of, I'll tell you how it is, and not, So she said, do you think you could sort of tone her down a little bit so we could understand why Bridget is actually friends with her? Because I don't know, another thing in fiction that you've probably seen or heard, like I've often been told, especially the type of genre that we write, who a character is friends with is a reflection on them as well, right? Because if you hang out with some horrible person all the time, I'm going to wonder why you do that, and and so my editor said, just can you tone it down a bit? So I wrote one line, and it was from Bridget's point of view, and it said, Bridget had only seen Fred cry twice, once when she was when her cat died, and once when her mum got married for the 4th time, because numbers, anyway, there's a reason it's actually the 6th time in the other book. But anyway, and I thought, oh, that's why she's the way she is. Maybe there was, it wasn't just a decision that she'd kind of made. Most of us come to our reasoning with something. And I thought, if you'd grown up with your mum getting married and divorced, frequently, and seen the fallout of that, then maybe you would be also a little, not, keen on getting married yourself and going through that upheaval. So suddenly I thought about that. And then one of the movies I'd really loved from when I was a child was The Parent Trap, and the original. And if anyone hasn't seen it, where have you been? But it's basically twins are separated at birth. One goes with the dad, one goes with the mum, and then they find this out later at summer camp and decide to plot to bring their parents back together. And also the dad's about to marry this young woman, and they have to try and, scare her off. So I thought, it would be really fun if I did a sort of a reverse grown-up Parent Trap, and that is Fred, meets the groom's son, and decides that they both, for various reasons, don't think the wedding should go ahead, and try to break that up. So as soon as I had that idea, I knew I had to write her story. So it was really in edits when it kind of came about. It wasn't contracted. There was another book that was contracted first, but we pushed that one aside and replaced it with this one. I will just say one more thing, sorry, is that I did grapple a little bit with the decision to write Fred once I was already too far gone to not write her. In hindsight now, I think I could have just used that story idea with someone else. But then I think people had already connected with Fred, and it was fun to, continue the world. But I do believe it's a viable, valid choice to choose, not to tie yourself down to one person, and to just, be single and enjoy your life. And, people are single for all different reasons, but I believed in Fred's reason, and I didn't want to show that you have to have love or romance or that kind of romantic love to live a full life. So I really grappled with that a little bit, because although I write romance, I didn't want that to be the message. But then I had to remind myself, yeah, I write romance, and romance readers come to romance with certain expectations. And so unless I wanted to do a different type of book for Fred, it's always going to be that she would come around a little bit and fall in love. But I hope she hasn't done a complete 180. Like, she still doesn't think she'll get married or have kids, Yeah, sorry for that long-winded answer.
Don't give away the end. And also, you said sorry a couple of times in that answer, and you know that I take issue with that. You know that I don't.
You know what I'm bursting to say right now?
What?
What do you think? Apologise for it. I'm bursting to say sorry for saying sorry.
So anyone who hasn't heard me talk about this before, I take issue with the way women and girls are socialized to basically apologize for existing by saying,
and we don't even realize we're doing it.
Yeah, that's right. We don't. It's a reflexive thing, because it's essentially been happening since we were small. It can be apologizing for taking up space, whether that's verbal space or physical space. And it's also become an Australian thing where people are saying sorry when actually what they mean is excuse me when they're trying to move through a crowd. But I think women in particular will say sorry for things like that. It's like, oh, I'm sorry.
Don't really say
I'm not
sorry
to
as much.
say. It's like,
Yeah, when men bump into each other, I don't think they say sorry, do they?
so excuse me or pardon me, mate.
Yeah. No, thanks for pulling me up on that. It's a good reminder to have.
I think these days Australians in general do say sorry if they're bumping into each other, but I do think that's contextually a different sorry. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, lots of words have different meanings, right?
Yeah. So I could probably write a whole thesis on the word
I
sorry.
think you can. Don't worry, I've written a note to say something afterwards about this.
So now the novel is set on Norfolk Island, and you've done a beautiful job of creating that setting to the point where I not only totally believed I was there, but absolutely now want to visit there. So I think Norfolk Island tourism probably should get in touch with you. Why did you choose that location?
Well, first, you should go there. It's really fun and just a little bit quirky and different to sort of your paradise island, which is why I chose it, I guess. Well, no, I wish that I was that clever. I was glad that I chose it that reason. But there's a sort of I don't know what the word is, but the reason I chose it was because this book, as you just heard, came about pretty quickly. Like I wasn't planning on writing Fred's story after Bridget's. I had another book, which I'm now writing at the moment, which I was going to write. So when we realized I was going to write a Fred, story about Fred, my publisher's like, well, let's see if we can get it in, the year following Bridget. So while people are still excited and enjoying Bridget, they're get Fred not too far after. And so then I had to basically rearrange my writing year and go, okay, I'm writing Fred now. And I knew when I decided that there was going to be a wedding, I thought, oh, it would be really fun. There's a lot of people having destination weddings kind of at the moment. So I immediately thought, oh, I could go to Broome, or I could go to Bali, or I could, go down south in WA or whatever. But another sort of, trope in romance fiction is forced proximity kind of thing where you're all thrown together, or two people usually thrown together. And I thought it would be so fun. Like, Fred just doesn't want to go to this wedding. And, obviously there was going to be shenanigans and drama and things along the way. I thought it would be really fun if she's kind of, they're all the people, Fred, the love interest Leo, her parent, his dad, her mum, her brother, like his family, they're all stuck kind of on an island. I thought that would be more fun. Just a good setting to be able to play with. But it was like November, December, and the only time I could really go was January, which is school holidays in Australia. And I thought, well, rightly so, when I looked up all the sort of traditional islands that you might think of having a wedding on, like, in the Great Barrier Reef and all those, places off Queensland, that they were pretty much booked up for a start. Also, if I managed to get them, very, very expensive. And then I actually remembered how it was Anthea, my other co-host, she mentioned Norfolk Island as possibly being a great place for a historical fiction book ages ago, and that she would like to go there. And yeah, she couldn't come with me because she was in Bali, because I always ask her Anthea on my research trips. And so I took my mum, but I found that, so I looked up Norfolk Island. Basically, I didn't really know much about it because I didn't pay much attention at school. I was too busy like lusting after a boy. So I looked up Norfolk Island, and it was, I could get there relatively not too expensive, and there was accommodation available, and so I booked it and we went. But it actually worked out. I think there's that magic in the writing creatively world, as we said. Like, I went there, and I'm thinking of Fred, who's a very much an online kind of person. She's always on the dating apps. She's very modern in terms of, the is it Gen Zs, like she's always on her phone. And then I turn up in Norfolk Island, and basically you have to, I knew this beforehand, but you have to buy a SIM card there because Telstra and Optus don't work. Not all the places have Wi-Fi. Like, here where you go, most places, you can log on to the Wi-Fi. And so that was fun to play with. And it's not exactly, there's cows crossing the road. There's, the buildings are not, your glamorous, like, holiday resort type building. They're still kind of set, stuck in the last century. Not, and the people are really, it's like you're living in a small town, obviously people, so it didn't feel as holiday destination as Fred is expecting, which was really fun to be able to play with. And there was some other things they could do. I'm trying to remember if I put that in the book now, but we went like on a I don't think I did. We went on a progressive dinner tour.
I think there was a mention of it, but what, like, that's pinging something.
Maybe I mentioned it, like, show it or something, because but like, we went to different people's houses that were actually locals, and they cooked food for us that was sort of traditional of Norfolk Island, or the food was from, well, all their stuff they grow there and everything, but it was food produce from Norfolk, and they each all talked to us for about 10-15 minutes and sort of explained, why their history with Norfolk Island themselves, whether they were there from the mutineers. Is that the right word? From my notes? Yeah. Or whether they came later, and just the living experience of it. So it was really interesting, and there's a lot of things you can do like that on Norfolk Island that I don't think that it's the same sort of at a more holiday destination. If that makes sense. Yeah.
It was an interesting element to have Fred the serial data
not
be able to access her Tinder.
Yeah, exactly. I just thought, and so it's amazing, isn't it? How writing, I also think that's why you have to, well, you don't have to, there's no strict rules or whatever, but I've written 2 books now that are kind of, the setting plays a little bit more, even though my rural romances are set in the country, I would say that the setting to me is not really as important to me as sort of the community and the people and that. The 2 books that I've written where setting plays a big part is How to Mend a Broken Heart, which is set in New Orleans, and this one, Norfolk Island, because it's somewhere, I hadn't been before. But I do think if you're going to write a book set in a place like that, that you haven't been before, it's really good to go there, because although we have Google Maps and, so many people share their holiday, photos online, and there's forums and all that, it's just little things that come up that you wouldn't think to Google that I think make the book, authentic, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I think it's also, it was also a clever use of technology and the lack thereof in terms of the storyline in general, because as you know, I don't tend to write novels that can have mobile phones in the recent past. But it was actually, it felt like a completely natural way to use the lack of SIM card, because Fred decides she's not going to get one. Wi-Fi. But it adds this tension when B, who's back in Fremantle, Perth, is wanting to find out what's happening. They can't communicate unless Fred is actually at the resort where she's staying. So
actually, someone said to me the other day, and I hadn't even thought about this, a journalist that I was talking to a book about, without giving too many spoilers away, stuff happens later in the book that, because they're on Norfolk Island, and it's not a hugely populated island, and it's not a holiday, it is a holiday location, but it's not the holiday location the same as, say, Whitsundays or Halverton Island. Not that I've been to any of them, I'm just imagining. But it's not a typical, people get married there, but it's not like a place where lots of people get married all the time. Whereas I think in some of these, places like Bali or Broome and that, it's a more wedding destination place, that there was things that happened that if I'd been on a bigger island or one that was focused more on weddings, it would have not worked. I'm trying to say it without, you know what I mean? And I never thought about that. And so it just shows how sometimes, I just really do believe in the magic of writing, that things work out if you just sort of go with the flow, and trust things.
Well, and I think going with the flow is an important part of it, because as a writer, you might have thought, oh, God, I'm going to have to try to get around that. I don't really want to have. Instead, you actually went with it and incorporated it into the storyline and made it part of the dramatic tension in parts of the story.
Yeah. And I should say there, because I know you're a little bit more of a plotter and a planner than I am, but I did have an idea. I just don't do it probably as much on the page, but I had an idea of what the shape of the story was going to be. But Norfolk Island helped me lean into that even better, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Look, I am as surprised as anyone that I turned out to be a plotter and a planner, because I was so convinced I was just going to, be writing freely, but that's the romantic ideal, isn't it? And in practicality, in practice, it did not.
Whatever works for you. And in some ways, with the book I'm writing now, I've actually planned a little bit more, and it's going a lot slower than I thought, than when I just go with the flow. So who knows? Every book is different, and I think, sometimes we write a book that's plotted more, and then the next one, all that goes out the window.
Yeah, true. And they all do have different lives. That's why I often think you can't tell anyone, oh, this is the way to do it, because each story will have its own requirements, and I certainly can't predict what they will be. I can start out the way I mean to continue, but they will tell me what they need, and they will make changes. So Norfolk Island in its way was like that, in that it told you what it needed. As a tourist, leaving aside yourself as a writer and the story you are writing, do you have any tips for anyone who might want to travel to Norfolk?
Definitely. I'm trying to think. I didn't get a SIM card. So
Oh,
like, you don't need to. There's a few little places and most hotels have it more. So like I would definitely just enjoy the time not being as connected to and then I would definitely do like I went for 5 days, I think. I would like to have gone a little bit longer, or I definitely would like to go back one day because there's so much history, so many different tours that as I said, we did the progressive dinner tour, which was great. I also went to Colleen McCulloch's house, which I didn't put in the book. I mentioned that you could do tours because you go and do things and then you just have to see how it works in the. So as a reader or a writer, even if you haven't read like loads of Colleen McCulloch books, you would have, although a lot of people have read the Thornbirds, kind of thing, especially in Australia. I I would go and look at her house because it is, what's the word? I don't know, like it's over the top. She had her wallpaper was specially designed. It's like gold and stuff from someone over in Europe. And then she has a fern room, or I should say she's not alive anymore, but there's her housekeeper who was there does the tour. So you have to do a tour. She's got a fern room. You can see where she did her writing and all her books and first editions and different stuff. She's got a brilliant library room as well. The toilet. I mean, you have to go just to see the toilet. Honestly, you've never seen a toilet like it. My mum had to use it, and the lady had to explain to her how to use it because it's that,
oh,
out there. And there's just artwork or like and sculptures and stuff that she's collected from her travels and stuff. So it is, as a writer, I was like, oh golly, I need to have an amazing like out there house like this so people will one day come and I don't know. So I would do that, but I definitely do like we didn't do the museum tours because I was also with my mum and she gets quite tired and stuff. So there's so many things that you could do. There's like commander's dinner, a convict's dinner, the fish fry, like it's just a really, and it's very peaceful because nothing is really open past 8 o'clock at night. So, it's like, yeah, so I would just say see as much as you can, go on the tours, some walks, like just, yeah, experience as much as you can. It was great.
you did mention the fish fry in the story, and you sold it very well. Actually, I wanted to go to
And I
that.
didn't actually go to a fish fry, which is funny because I put that in the end rather than the progressive dinner. So I would like to go back and do one of those. Yeah.
So the plotline of Bad Bridesmaid is that Fred travels to Norfolk for her mum Tracy's 6th wedding. Now Tracy is marrying Paul, who was her high school sweetheart, and they reconnected at a school reunion. Paul is a widower with 3 grown-up children and some grandchildren. It is quite a cast, including the kids who have their own personalities. Actually, Kayla, who thinks she's a cat. Did they all come to you through the writing, or did you spend time developing them before you started writing?
The secondary characters they pretty much all came as I was writing. I always do a bit of character work on the main characters, so I'd written, things about Fred, what her sort of backstory was a little bit, although things of that developed as I knew something had happened to Fred apart from all her mums, but I wasn't really sure what it was. But yeah, I did some work on Leo, but a lot of that developed as I went along too. But the characters, especially the girls, there was 4 kids in the book to start with. And I tried to give them each like a different, different personality and all this different stuff. But there was kind of too many, and that was one of the things my editor said when she read the first book. Like, what is the point of them? You need to make them function a bit more. And doing that, I actually condensed from 4 to 3. I almost did 2, but I kind of needed 3. I can't remember exactly why, but it just felt right, 3 to me, but 4 was too many. So yeah, no real planning on any of them beforehand. I just knew that I wanted Fred to have quite a small family. It's really just her mum, her brother, and her. Whereas I wanted Leo to come from a family where it just felt bigger, if that makes sense. And they were kind of closer. Yeah.
So Leo is in that reverse parent trap situation. He is Paul's son. He does not want Paul to marry Tracy, and because his mother died not that long ago, and he thinks that Paul is perhaps rushing it. And we have Fred, who does not want her mother Tracy to marry Paul because she thinks Tracy's already been married 5 times, and
That's enough.
Why put anyone through it? Essentially, but yeah, Leo. There's the frisson between Leo and Fred when Fred sees him at the airport before flying to Norfolk. She likes what she sees, to paraphrase Kath Taylor. So how did Leo form as a romantic hero, and how, because you've written quite a few romantic heroes, do each of them kind of appear to you in a way you just think, okay, that's who he is, or do you have to consciously think about what you want that character to be in the story, if that makes sense?
That's a really interesting question, and I think it depends from book to book. In my romance, like my rural romance novels, I always have the point of view of the hero or the love interest as well, which means I do the same kind of work before I start. So I do think about that character before I start. I often think about archetypes. I've mentioned before. I look at my archetype book and I kind of have a feel of where the character sort of is, the archetype that draws me, that character feels like. And then I write notes and think about what their interests are, all that kind of different stuff. With Leo, I guess I didn't do as much because you don't get his point of view. Same with the love interests in the other Bridget. But I did think, I guess I always do think, like, what is the person that's going to be best and worst for the main character of this story? So in Fred's situation, opposites. I was going for an opposites attract kind of story, but sort of reversing the standard cliche whereas the woman wants love and romance and the guy's kind of, not sure about it, and she has to kind of, not sell herself, that's the wrong, but she has to, it's her that's kind of, he meets her and then, all his ideas go out the window because he just can't bear to be without her. So suddenly he wants all the things that maybe he never wanted. I kind of wanted to play with that the opposite way around. So I knew that Fred is anti-marriage, anti-love, sleeps around, is happy to meet someone, have a bit of fun with them, move on to the next person. And they know, makes sure people know. So she's not like using people, but she's very much just here for the moment when she meets a guy and not planning for the future. Whereas Leo, coming from his kind of background, he does want that connection with someone that's going to be special and that they're going to last, and hopefully he wants to get married, and all that kind of stuff. And he's looking for love. He believes in love. He believes in the one even. So it's kind of like the total opposite of Fred. So I guess that's how I started, with Leo. I'm trying to think, because he's a teacher and he also plays a ukulele and his band's starting to get a little bit successful. I don't know how that came in. I can't even remember.
Well, you do continue the uke theme. So it's a very definite part of his personality, I think, to have the performance side or the musician side, and you do use it in the storyline. I'm not going to say how.
Yeah, that's true. I'm remembering to myself how I go along. Yeah, I really wanted him to. He has some own issues, not big, like not major ones, but he's trying to, work out things with fame and wealth and stuff. Yeah.
And he misses his mum, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that was hard to do in a rom-com that's only 5 or 7 days or something as well, because obviously I didn't want it to be like, you don't want him to be, oh, woe is me, and stressed and like, although it's obviously natural to grieve your parents and stuff, I wanted him to be, not depressed all the time. So it was kind of a fine line. Yeah. But I did want to explore that issue that, he has not moved on. He feels like his dad has moved on too quick.
Yes. So, writing a romantic hero, I imagine you need us to fall in love with him a little bit, and you have succeeded.
Oh, that's good.
But I'm wondering if you fall a little in love with your heroes, and if so, how do you detach from them?
That's a good question too. Look, I've got a friend, Catherine Hine, who writes rural romance, and she's always like going on about, oh, I'm obsessed, I'm so in love, like, and I just, I never really thought of myself as that kind of attached and in love with my heroes, but I think, you have to they have to be someone that you would imagine being happily, to fall for and stuff. So I've forgotten the question now.
Well, it was, if you do fall in love with them a little bit, how do you detach from them? But I think saying you don't actually attach as much.
Yeah, probably not. Like I do and I don't. So it's interesting also I think for most of my career, I have gone from writing, like I've alternated between writing romance and writing sort of more general contemporary fiction, where the love interests, if they're there, it's not as big a part of the book. So I probably have time, before I have to dive completely into another, intense relationship with a hero.
Yeah. I would imagine it's probably characters like Bea and Fred who are harder to let go of because you spent the most time with them.
Yeah. Yes. And I think especially, I don't know, there's something about the other Bridget that just I'd struggled for a few years before. I cut the books before that. It's not just the other Bridget. Like I really loved writing the Work Wives and Talk to the Heart. But there's something about Bridget, I think, because it's a book about books and the effect that they have on us. And then I guess Fred was already part of that world. That yeah, it's a special series for me. Maybe that's why it's taken me longer to write this current book that I'm writing. I just, in hindsight, because my heart's still a little bit with these people. Maybe, who
Well,
knows?
given that's the case, is the universe going to expand? Is the other Bridget universe going to expand?
I don't think so. I always say never say never. I don't know about you, Sophie, and sequels and things like that. It's never a complete no.
Yeah.
But to me, the other people in these books, I think we talked about this maybe with Rachel Treasure when she was talking about writing The Farmer's Wife. Like to write a sequel or another book, you have to, if you're writing a romance, which is what this world is, right? They're rom-coms. You have to break, people up if you're going to have a sequel or something bad has to happen. Someone has to die or whatever. And obviously, I'm not going to write another book about Bridget or Fred because they're done. But the other people sort of in that world are all already kind of paired off, and I'm happy with who they're. I'd have to like break up her brother or something. I probably would never write his story either because he's gay. I just don't feel like that's my wet place and area to write. But like the characters in the library, yeah, they're all. So I don't think so. Although I will say, trying to do this without giving a spoiler for the other Bridget, the epilogue of the other Bridget, surprised my publisher. If anyone's read it, and remembers, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it features Lola, who is a young character. And after writing that epilogue, I was like, oh, I wouldn't mind writing a YA in her story.
Ah, okay. So is young adult fiction something that you had been thinking about before that?
Not
Or was
really.
just
It
that
was just
character?
so, yeah, so no. Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's a no.
Well, as you said, never say never.
Yeah, that's
And also in saying, oh, are you going to expand the universe? It's not like you're short of ideas for other books. You don't
true.
to expand that universe to get other books.
Yeah, yes, no. The next few books are all not done. That would be great. But I've got ideas and sort of, contracts for the next 3 books, the one I'm writing now and 2 more. So, and I think it's good. I don't know about you. I mean, I feel like it's good not to be set too far ahead because
Mhm.
otherwise, by the time I get to a book I'm supposed to have, and we're lucky, most publishers are pretty flexible in that we moved the book that I was going to write, we pushed that back and I put Fred in. So, there's always room to move things around, but I feel like it's also a bit like Elizabeth Gilbert, my guru, says,
Mhm.
if you leave an idea for too long, sometimes, it gets stale, someone else kind of finds it. So I don't want to think too far ahead, if that makes sense. Like I feel like I've already thought too far ahead just with 3 books. I think it's good to leave things open to see what inspiration comes along. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, so who knows? Mm.
So at the time we're speaking, you are about to embark on some publicity for the
Yes.
Bad Bridesmaid. You'll be traveling. In fact, I'm going to see you in Sydney, and you're going to see Elizabeth Gilbert in Sydney because you're going to a weekend. So the technical part of this question for the writers who are listening is, given that you're about to be touring the Bad Bridesmaid, there is quite a bit going on. It's not like it's just
Yeah.
one thing there. You're also writing the Lucky Sisters. So in terms of I'm going to put this in energy terms. So in terms of your energy division of labor, how do you manage that? So is it like a conscious changing of gears?
No, it's been very hard the last few months, I would say, because I have had, and that's the whole, we've talked about 2 or 1 books a year. I think 2 for me is doable but then when you add publicity and editing of the previous book, it always means that 1 book never gets fully your attention. And
Mhm.
I feel like this poor book, The Lucky Sisters, which I'm writing, has never had my full attention because I started writing it basically a couple of weeks before Outback Reunion came out. So I did events and different things for that, not loads. And then we had Christmas and, all the things in the lead up to that. And then I've been already doing like the pre-publicity for the Bad Bridesmaid, started a couple of weeks ago. And I've been interrupted by that. So it is hard. And I was actually thinking today, I was doing a little bit of writing this morning, and now probably I won't really get, I don't know about you, but I, as you said, things are tiring and I cannot write when I am touring and doing 1 or 2 events a day. I get tired from the
Mm.
whole, it's fun and you thrive on talking to people about books and it's inspiring, but it's also exhausting because you kind of have to be on the whole
Yeah.
time. And then there's the traveling in between, staying in different places. So I can't write while I am on tour.
Mm.
What I'm going to try do though, because this book I am not finished, and there's probably another 40, 50,000 words to go, which I will then, once I get back, I'm just going to hopefully just be able to focus on that for a month and, but I'll just keep thinking of ideas. Like just thinking about the
Mm.
story, maybe even read little bits of it here and there. Because who was it? I was listening to a podcast the other day and saying even if you, when you're writing a draft, she tries to be there in the draft 6 days a week. Like, and she knows that sometimes, so hard. But she says even if it's just reading a paragraph or tweaking something or just so you're staying in the world of it. So I think I'll try and stay in the world of it. And I've got a couple of research books. Here's one called Coma and the Near-Death Experience. So there's a couple of things that I need to write about when I get back, and so I figure I'll read the books and yeah. But it's hard. It's hard. I think the idea, I don't know about you, but I feel like the ideal situation for writing a novel is to be in that world and not having to jump into the edits of another one or publicity for another. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I've only ever been on the 1 book a year rhythm at most.
And do you think it
Apart
works like
from
that
apart
well?
from when I was writing romance, but then I was not doing publicity for that, so that was a different thing.
Yeah. And when I used to write 2 books a year when I first started, but I wasn't doing as much publicity then,
Yeah.
and although I had little kids and other things, but yeah, I think, and now we're expected as authors to do so much more. Like I joked to my son, I went to get my nails done for tour today, and then I joked to my son, I'm about to do a Zoom. I've got to go make myself look presentable, and as presentable as I am able to. And then he said, oh yeah, like that's the problem with now, Zooms being on YouTube, or like podcasts being on YouTube and stuff. And I just think, when we both got published, there was less requirements of authors to, we like interacting with readers, but
Mm.
it's another thing that takes your time and your energy. So there's so many things more that I have to do now than I did when I first started. And there's multiple reasons for that. It's the world's changed, but also, yeah, I've got more of a following and, the publishers send me on tours and stuff. So yeah, it is hard. I think ideally for me, I would like 1 book a year, but then I've got all these ideas and projects that I kind of want to do as well. And that's
Ding,
not
ding, ding. That's what it
enough
is.
years in my life.
So I think in terms of the other things like doing this podcast, like social media things, like you've got a newsletter that you're putting out pretty frequently. I see it all as great stuff, but the challenge for me at the moment, and it's possibly the same challenge for you, is rhythmically how can it work so that the writing is still prioritized and not
Yeah.
disrupted any more than it needs to be? Because it's not that I don't want to spend time doing those things; it's more that
Oh, I
the
enjoy
rhythm
it.
of those things is different. It's more staccato than the flowing rhythm that writing often is. And so I'm just trying to get my head around it at the moment. Maybe I should ask ChatGPT for help. But it's that thing of how do I rhythmically organize it so that I'm not reacting? Because I think part of the social media trap can be the reactivity trap, which is, oh, I've been pinged with a notification, I should do
I
that.
better answer it now, right
Yeah.
now and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially like messages too, and that, if you see them come in or you read them, then you think, oh, I don't want to look like I'm not responding, like it's like with so, but also I think the thing is, my problem is that I do find focusing on one thing, you know, quite tricky, and I often will write like a few sentences and then think, oh, I'm just going to check my email, or I'll look up a different word or something, and then I get distracted. And so I think for me, it's a matter of really trying to focus and put things in boxes and compartmentalize. So
Yeah.
like, I know that I'm best at writing in the morning, and that I need to make sure that I don't do appointments or podcasts or anything like that if I possibly can. Let's face it, specialist medical things or that, sometimes you have to go when they tell you to. But I really try and prioritize like 4 hours of solid writing. And I think I'm gonna have to get better at it because there's a few things, different projects I'm doing. I'm doing 2 podcasts, which I love. I'm doing another project which I haven't, said anything about yet, but you know what I'm talking about. And I've got my own writing, and so like I think I'm gonna have to get better at really not allowing myself to be distracted in that time and just focusing on the book in that time. And I think I'm probably going to have some periods this year where I delete my social media off my phones again. I did it for a couple of months last year or something, but it's hard. Like as you said, when you're writing 2 books a year, I'm like, oh, I better not delete because I don't want someone to tag me in a photo, like some review, and I don't respond or whatever. But I think we worry too much about stuff like that. How do you feel? You know what I mean? Like,
Well, instead of deleting them, can you just switch off the notifications and then actually allocate time in your calendar or
I
send an
don't
alert?
actually have
Say,
notifications. I don't have the notifications on
oh,
anyway.
okay, all right.
It helps to an extent, but then I'll I'll pick up my phone and I put my phone off and in my bedroom during the morning so that I
Mhm.
can just like if I have a break, I'll have a quick check. But I think even just going onto social media, it takes you out of the. I mean,
Yeah.
part of me thinks, I've written 80,000 words where I've done this, I've written 20 books, not all of them because social media wasn't as big, but, part of me thinks it obviously hasn't hurt me a huge amount of being, you know,
That's
but
right. So let's focus on that.
yeah, give
But
me some
obviously,
therapy.
it obviously hasn't hurt you. I think part of the issue we're having with all of this is pathologizing behavior that is actually not harmful to us personally.
Because
So
like some people probably can't focus, you mean, like if they're doing that, but
yeah.
like other people's brains, like obviously I can maybe look at a message and then write the sentence, but it doesn't necessarily ruin the
So
whole
we'll come back
flow.
to my favorite thing to talk about in relation to this, which is knowing your own nature. So
Yeah.
I could say, oh my God, like it's so bad that I'm doing XYZ, XYZ. That's not good. I've heard it's not good. I keep seeing stuff saying,
Yeah.
is it not good for me or is it just not good for some other people? If it's not good for other people, they should stop doing it. But if I'm
Yeah.
functioning, but if I Rachel Johns am writing 80,000 word manuscripts and I'm doing all this other stuff, is it actually bad for me or is it just my nature to move around these things? And in fact, I would suggest that the mere fact that you can write a few lines and then go and do that and come back means that you're actually in the flow of the story. And
Yeah.
what you're doing, to come back to something from a very early episode of ours, is stepping in and out of the river.
Another
The river
yeah.
is flowing. You're just stepping in and out of it because you trust that that creative river will keep flowing. You don't actually need to check on it all the time. You're just stepping in and out. So for you, doing that is not necessarily detrimental unless you start to think it's detrimental.
Well, I guess the only thing is I know I've taken longer to write this book.
But is it because you plan that one more? So there's a different process. Because I also
Yeah.
think the
And
previous.
also I think in some ways I'm slowing down, but it feels like the quality is better to me initially, like, and I'm thinking a lot about it. So yeah, it is so easy to beat ourselves up, isn't it? Because we think we should be doing this or we should be doing that. Yeah. But
You also, I think, said the last couple of novels that you have planned them more, but you've also had less rewriting to do.
yeah, that's true. So
So
yeah.
you might have been slower delivering, but probably less time after
Yeah.
delivery.
Yeah. So I just, yeah, it's true. One thing is we need to get out of our own heads, I think, sometimes because it's so easy to like, as you said, that's why my word for the year I've decided is grace. Um, because I was thinking, not like last year, word of the year was no, because I failed dismally in saying no to things. But I realized it's the guilt of not saying yes to cover quotes, or if someone asks me to present something or whatever, I feel guilty. And also I think, oh, they'll be thinking, oh, she's a snob, she doesn't want to do this, when it's just that literally I don't have the time to do this, and I tend to take on more. I'm happy to do the podcasts and my Substack and stuff, but then the extra stuff that other people ask of me, I tend to take more of that on without thinking about the consequences because I feel bad. So my word this year is grace, to give myself the grace to, not beat myself up about all these things.
Yeah. Because you're never going to know if someone thinks you're a snob, because they'll lie to your face if you ask a direct question. So if you say no because you're prioritizing your time and your interests in your well-being,
Yeah.
then that's actually the most pertinent point. If they think you're a snob because of that, who cares? Like, honestly,
That's true. Who cares? And I've already said yes to a couple of people this year for cover quotes, and I really need to, from now on, it's a hard no.
yeah. So anyone who's listening to this, sorry, he's closed for
because
those.
I just don't have the time between, reading the books for book club and reading through deadlines. There's 3 books a month already. And then I also want to be able to pick up books that, might be related to the writing that I'm doing, or just because I want to read for fun,
Yeah. And also, Rachel, I would like to reinterpret this as well, because the book club is part of as you said, you're reading books for book club. That's part of why you don't have time to do cover quotes. By reading books for the book club, by putting them in your book club, you are being tremendously supportive to those books.
Yeah, and we do try and support Australian authors who are emerging or...
Yeah, that's right. It's often a first novel, and you're going to be interviewing those authors on reading between deadlines. So I think you're kind of doing a great job. Like,
Thank you. I love my Sophie therapy.
And I'm not saying this just to say it, because as you know, I only say things if I mean them. So I really think you do need to give yourself some grace for the amount of work you're already doing that's community based within the Australian writing community. It's lovely if you can provide a cover quote. It's just not feasible, I think, when you're writing manuscripts and doing edits at the same time. So for authors who would like, or it's usually their publishers or publicists who ask for it.
That's the thing. I can say no to publishers and publishers, but a lot of people just slide into my DMs.
Well, DMs are closed because you're not checking them that often now, are you?
I'm actually going to put when I go off social media for a couple of months after this tour, I'm going to put a message in on my DMs to say, yeah, I'm not really checking these, so thanks.
Because it is, look, it's one of those things where you love to do it. It is a lovely thing to do. It's just simply a matter of time. And I think the book club which has been something you've been doing for a long time, is an amazing platform for the writers whose books you cover. And that's your pastoral care work.
Yeah.
Done.
I agree. Thank you. I was going to say, a question for you before we probably need to wrap up. I would love the readers to let us know too, the readers who listen to this. Do you do cover quotes actually influence you in buying a book? And Sophie, as a publisher, what's your thoughts on that?
So as a publisher of nonfiction, I tend to think that they're less important. And I will say to writers who ask about them, look, it's lovely to have them. When it's a front cover, for me, I think it's actually a question of design more than it is to do with fitting a quote. Because if I have a cover design and if I think there's a cover quote coming that we want to have and the author wants to have, then I would ideally want to brief to the designer that that's coming, so he or she can leave space for that.
I've had that I've had that sometimes on covers. They were like, we really can't fit a quote.
Yeah, because it is about the design. So they can definitely, on the back cover, because that's usually done towards the end of the process. So the back cover, you can fit a quote in there. A cover quote that comes through not in time for a cover anywhere it can actually be used in a press release.
Yeah.
So they're never wasted. They can be used on social media, whatever it is. But I often think the design of the cover is the priority, because that's what people are making a decision on when they're across the bookshop. They're seeing the design. They're not walking towards that book because they detect there may be a quote from another author on that cover. They're walking towards it as a piece of design. And the design for your books, for example, would always have Rachael Johns in prominent letters, because that's an important design feature, because people responding to your name. So that's the most important piece of real estate. On that cover. And you can see it's the same size on the other Bridget. So that's what people are walking towards. So they're not even detecting that subtitle. And so in terms of the design of this cover, that is the priority. That's the second priority. This is the third priority. That is the last priority.
So for anyone not listening, I mean, not watching, that's
sorry.
first priority, title second, and then sort of the picture or the image, and then possibly
then the subtitle,
like a subtitle or quote.
Arguably, the Penguin logo has a priority, depending on the reader, because some readers will respond really strongly to that Penguin logo and some will not. So that's why it would be up in the corner.
Yeah,
but it's unobtrusive. So cover design I've talked about, I think, well, maybe not on this podcast, but if anyone's interested in cover design, look, here's my segue. You could send us a question saying, or just send us something. Yes, I would love to hear more about cover design. It is a really interesting.
And the process, yeah.
And the process, if my background looks like it's getting darker and darker, it's because there's a very gloomy sky here in Sydney. With, you know, the kind of thread of something. I don't know. So I actually didn't ask you at the top for an update on what you're doing, but I think we found out that you're about to embark on some events. So how many states are you crossing?
3, not including WA, so 4, I suppose, including WA. I'll be in Manly and, well, this is coming out this week, so I'll be Manly this weekend, this Friday night, and Penrith on Thursday night. And then next week, I'm mostly in South Australia. You can see all the events on my website or on Penguin's website. And then I'm going to Blush Festival. Have you heard about Blush Festival, Sophie?
No, I have not.
Blush Festival, that's the following, like the weekend of Valentine's Day, like that past Valentine's Day. That's a film and book romance festival. It's the second year. So there'll be like, you know, people talking about books and people talking about films, and there's going to be the opening night is oh my gosh, I can't think of the word, a viewing of the new Bridget Jones movie. So I'm very
okay, yeah. I'm having a look at it. It's in Brisbane.
Yes, Brisbane was in Brisbane last year too, so I think it's down
Blush with 2 S's if anyone's Googling it.
So I'll be there and then home again for a bit to write. What about you, Sophie? Because last time I spoke to you, you were just about to go into the structural edits for...
I'm now awaiting the copy edit. The time we're speaking, it'll be back in a week's time. But today, actually, I wrote a whole proposal for a new book. So I had an idea.
That I heard about, or like...
No, it's actually, I had a different... it's the same title as the proposal I had. I actually have a title this time. And I wrote a proposal several months ago. It did not meet with a favourable reception. This feeds into an earlier, here's me back announcing, earlier podcast episode to do with rejection. Yes, we still get rejected. It's usually on the idea level, but I get rejected on a regular basis for ideas. So this idea was not wholly rejected, but there was enough pushback that I thought I'm just leaving this alone. And then it was still in my brain, just the title. And so I just, over the past few days, I was thinking, if I completely change the tone of that story and just come up with a completely different storyline, but use that as the central book, same title, then let's see what happens. And so, yeah, did that.
So you did that today, so you'll be submitting it soon?
I'll send it to my agent probably as soon as we're off this, and then we'll see what happens. But
so does that mean because I know last year you were thinking of having a break from writing,
and then we know how that went because I've now got a book too.
Yeah, bit like our writing retreat. I mean, our reading retreat that didn't happen. So does this mean you just think you're definitely writing a book this year? You don't feel like you're going to have another break, or
well, I know. Obviously not. But look, it depends. They may not want to publish me again. Who knows? It's like you just never know. You never ever know.
Okay, no, it's true. You don't. Yeah.
So if they want to publish me again next year, then I'll be writing a book this year. But I decided it was a conscious process of doing this early, so that I know what I'm doing, because I've left myself with less time for the novel that's coming out in August this year. Not to its detriment, it's still getting the same processes, but it's more that it's just feeling a little more
pressure.
Yeah,
I understand. Trust me. Oh no, well, exciting! I can't wait to hear more about that.
I'm not saying anything about it because it may turn out to be nothing, and therefore it's not worth talking about. So
well, we'll find out in a few weeks when we come back in March, maybe.
Yes, and when we come back in March, it will be in your middle past at the time of that. But I would love to hear about the Elizabeth. I think our listeners slash
Definitely.
watchers would like to hear about the Elizabeth Gilbert weekend.
I'll
So,
definitely talk about that. Hopefully it's good.
well, I will look forward to seeing you. I'll be at Manly Library on Friday evening, the 31st of January, and Rachael Johns, thanks for your company. And I'm going to hold this book up again for those who are watching The Bad Bridesmaid.
I'll hold that up too. Thanks everyone, and thanks Sophie for your fabulous questions.
Have you reading? You will, if anyone just wants a glorious rom-com escape that will also linger with you, read it.
Thank
That's it.
you. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.